All right.
Hello. My name is Susie, and I am here to have a quick chat with this man.
Hello.
That's my introduction.
That's a good introduction. It's better than my introduction most nights of all Mo, just kind of turning up on stage and going, you alright? How are you?
Well, I'm pretty good.
Good.
So Pip and I know each other because I was a guest on his podcast, and for the last 6 episodes he's been a guest on my podcast. So I realised earlier that we've sort of barely had a conversation where we're not talking through microphones.
Yeah.
That's not changing tonight either.
It's the only way we interact and talk. I like it.
or Twitter as well.
Yeah, that works too. You recommended tons of good things for me to go and do in Bristol today, and I did fuck all.
Well, that's going to be my first question. What have you been doing in Bristol today?
Well, I walked down, there's a place on the waterfront bit that I always see the pizzas that look amazing. It's like pizzas and cider and pies, the stables. And I went in there and just quickly before sitting down I said, do you do milkshakes? They said no. So I left. Even though I've been waiting to eat there for ages, I really fancied a milkshake. So I went to Three Brothers and got a burger and a milkshake and sat on a boat, which was pretty sweet.
That's basically the Bristol experience.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Good.
I enjoyed it. But then I went to my hotel room and just did work, which is very boring. It's been nice. I love Bristol.
It's a good place. But anyway, we're all here because of this.
Yes.
Which I'm assuming a few of you have got copies now.
Good on you. Look at them all holding them up. That's good of you. I'm going to kick you out if you do that. I do.
So, do you want to tell us a little bit about your book?
Yes, I've done a book, haven't I? You're in it, which is nice. I was approached to do a book, basically doing the top 5 episodes of the podcast transcribed, and I thought that sounded kind of pointless. Because you can listen to them, which is easier than reading, and you can listen to them for free, which is cheaper than paying. But then I sat down with the publisher, with Hannah at Octopus, and we kind of discussed ideas, and we came up with the idea of dividing it into sections. And that suddenly really excited me, and as we started to put it together, it excited me more and more, and it sounds like a promo thing, but it just turned out far better than I was expecting. So we divided it into sections, like a mental health section, for example. So you'll have me chatting with Gail Porter about the time that she was sectioned, and me chatting to Eddie Temple Morris about his suicide attempt, or me chatting to Tom Robinson about the fact that when he was a kid coming of age and he realised his sexuality, it was obviously taboo. It's still taboo now sometimes to realise you're gay, but not only was it taboo, it was illegal. And that just blew my mind. And getting to put together collections of thoughts like this on topics like mental health and race and even lighter things like the creative process or comedy and music and movies and things like that, it was hugely exciting.
So I got a little bit of a sneak preview of the book. I got posted a copy last week. And given that it's such sort of short snippets from the podcast, it flows really, really well, I think, through different people's ideas about these different sections and topics.
There was a lot of probably pointless debate going back and forth of what should go where and when. And it's the same when you're doing an album. You'll spend hours slaving over the order of the songs, and most people are probably just going to buy a couple of them or listen in whatever order they want. And it's similar with this. It is a book that you can pick up and go to the chapter you want or the person you want. I was adamant. I sent an email to the guys at Octopus when we were almost done, and one of my notes on it was just because at the end it's got a breakdown of the contributors, and I just said page numbers like Argos. And I realised that note didn't make a lot of sense. It kind of makes sense, right? They were a bit confused, but I wanted it so that if you look at the back and you see a Susie Gage, then you can see the page numbers that she's on. So you could just go to the back and pick the people you like and go and find their bits. But again, it was evident that I might not deserve to have a book out. Page numbers like Argos, that'd be good.
And that is literally the first thing I did when I got the book. I went back to see if there was an index, and there was.
That was it. There's an index of subjects and different things like that. But then I thought also on the breakdown of the people, let's have page numbers like Argos.
Yeah.
I had ideas of chapters and topics, but I could, because I was filming at the time and doing other bits, I could then go, here's some that I think could work, here's some episodes that are really strong in my head, but they approach me because they're fans of the podcast, so they have stuff in their head as well. So it genuinely was a hugely collaborative a project that a lot of stuff that they would send me hadn't crossed my mind or I'd forgotten about. And yeah, we just kind of went back and forth for ages. Certain chapters, there wasn't as much as we were expecting, so I think I struggled to remember because of all the changes, but so yeah, comedy and the movies and politics, media and the law, they were all separate chapters at first, and then we're like, alright, there's not as much politics as we thought, or there's not much this and that. So it was a long process of seeing what fits and tweaking it all to fit the layout.
And to sort of pedal back even further, I have been watching the cycling today. I'm thinking about sort of your podcast. In the beginning, in the intro, you talk a lot about why you started sort of podcasting and how you got into it. So do you want to sort of say a bit about the medium?
Yeah, I started podcasting because I adore podcasts, and I had a show on XFM, and I realised I wasn't listening to any other radio, but I was listening to tons of podcasts, which made me go, so why am I doing a radio show? And it was the excitement of podcasts, just having that freedom to discuss and address anything you want. There's a couple of podcasts which aren't in here, because the reason being that the subjects of the podcast were anonymous intentionally in it, and it was an episode with a refugee called Ramel from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and a young lady called Mira, who was brought to this country in sex trafficking. And both of those were stories that, when they went out, it became apparent to me that they couldn't have been on the BBC or on ITV because of the detail in which they went into. And the Mira one in particular, Mira, I explained to both of them, you don't have to go into any detail you're not comfortable with. And Mira was adamant that she was like, look, this isn't comfortable for me to talk about. And she was crying as she was. She said, it isn't going to be comfortable for you to sit here and listen, and I was crying as I was listening, and isn't going to be comfortable for those at home to listen to. And a lot of people tweet me saying how emotional they were about it, but it fucking happened, and just because it's uncomfortable for us to hear, it doesn't mean it didn't happen, and doesn't mean it shouldn't be told. So I was adamant on putting this story out, and this is a bit that I'm not mentioning on any of the ones that are being recorded, because I don't want to get in any trouble, but that one was in collaboration with a Comic Relief and Sport Relief, and they kind of set it all up, and then when it came out they kind of backed off and didn't particularly push it or support it. And I understand that, but it just highlighted to me even more what a unique medium podcasting is, because the fact is, because of the heaviness and the graphicness at points of the content, I think they kind of felt this isn't really the Comic Relief type thing, but I'd already put an agreement in with them that they're not allowed to edit anything, and once I've got the recording, they can essentially go fuck themselves in a premiere with Lenny Henry, because I'm putting it out. Because if Mira wanted to tell that story, then I was allowing that, and that was a moment that really highlighted the power of podcasting to me. It was like, right, anywhere else it would have been edited down or changed or tweaked, and it wasn't.
And is that sort of why you think it wouldn't really fit in the book to take an excerpt from those two podcasts and put them in amongst all these other people, their stories, they stand alone?
Completely. I mention their stories in this and kind of say if you want to listen, but they were really stories that it felt I had the great privilege of being allowed to facilitate these young ladies to tell their story. So it's a story that has to be told in their voice. So I felt taking it out of their voice and putting it on page would kind of potentially change some of the context or delivery of it. So I mentioned it in there, but felt it wouldn't be right to put it in. And I felt, again, I didn't want to approach them and say, "Hi guys, do you mind if I put a life in my book?" It felt like an odd one in that respect. So yeah.
But it's not like the book isn't heavy in places as well. It tackles some sort of quite serious, weighty topics, like mental health and race and politics, and it doesn't sort of shy away from anything like that.
No, not at all. And again, it's really nice to have a project that I can honestly say I think is absolutely fucking amazing, and not feel arrogant, because it's amazing because of the way Akala and Saul Williams and Killer Mike articulate their feelings on the challenges facing Black America and Black England at the moment. It's amazing because of the openness and honesty of Gareth Porter, of Eddie Temple Morris, of Tom Robinson, of numerous other people. It's amazing because of John Ronson giving his views on social media and stuff like that. So it's nice to have a project that I'm insanely proud of, but I don't have to feel I have to be humble about. You know what I mean? It's because it's everyone else's input that's made it a stunning collection.
Awesome. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I think soon we can open it up to people who've got questions.
Yeah, I'll kind of explain how this works. A lot of people do a Q&A and pass a mic around the crowd, and I always feel that's kind of really impersonal. So the way I do it, if it's okay, if you pop your hand up if you'd like to ask a question, and then you come up here and we sit and have a chat. So it's not just ask your question, ask the next question, like we'll have a little conversation. I was worried in the lead up to this that I was posted about it all too much on social media, and then I got an email 2 days ago saying, "Have you ever thought of having a fan on the podcast?" I was like, I'm currently touring the country having fans on the podcast. That's kind of the point of what this is. So it made me feel better, at least, that I'm not overdoing it. So yeah, that's kind of how it'll work.
Excellent. Well, so have people got questions already, or?
Who's ready? Who's going to be bold enough to go? No, we've got a few to go first. That's perfect. There's
Awesome.
3 already.
Oh, in that case, I'm going to go and sit down and listen for the rest of it.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. And make some noise for Susie Gage, who's in the book. Right, who put their hand up first? This lady here, come on up. So I'll move over to this seat so people can just come in here and be more comfy. There you go. What is your name and what would you like to discuss?
My name's Susie.
Hello, Susie.
How are you?
We're only having, if you're female, you have to be called Susie tonight. I know that was explained in advance.
Susie Grosvenor, sorry about that.
Yeah, and any guys have to be called Pip. So, hello, and what would you like to discuss?
So that kind of like just broadcasting and that kind of thing, because there's been a huge rise in like podcasting and radio where people are talking stuff, and my kind of biggest memory from when I was a child is listening to stuff like the shipping forecast on Radio 4, and I wonder whether you had kind of like a standout kind of moment or memory of listening to kind of people talking on the radio as opposed to music.
Not hugely as a youngster. For me, it's all been in recent years, and by God, I've made up for it. I listen to, on average, 5 or 6 hours of podcasts a week. While on this tour, I'm driving a lot, so I'm getting 10 to 20 hours of podcasting a week, and I absolutely adore it. I think it's an amazing medium, and stupid things like I think it's better for when I'm exercising or when I'm on long journeys and stuff like that. It makes it all, it feels like you've got a companion there. For someone like me who, despite everything I've done in my career, I'm not someone who just needs to hear my own voice or likes hearing my own voice. So podcasts are a beautifully passive conversation that you don't have to actually engage in. You can just sit there and listen to the conversation unfold.
I think
and go,
it's a lot more intimate as well.
Yeah.
When you think you've just got regular radio playing music, it's playing to everybody. When it's kind of like a podcast or an audio book, it's like they're talking just to you, and that's it.
Completely. And again, it's why podcasts work for me, because it's exactly that. You you take it and you listen to it when you want to. It's not something you've just tuned into. It's not a conversation you've just happened to have passed. You've chosen to grab that, and when you've got time to give it your attention, to listen to it and take it in. So yeah, I absolutely adore it. I'm trying to think of any radio I listened to as a kid, but again, it was all more music based on my paper round and stuff like that.
We could only get Radio 4 in our car, according to my dad.
Yeah.
Listen to.
That was him reining you in from getting too wild.
So. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Cheers. Who was next? There was a hand there. There you go, sir. Come on up. What is your name and what would you like to discuss?
I'm Susie.
How's it going, Susie?
Yeah, okay, I'm Ollie. Good to meet you, man.
And you, and what would you like to discuss?
You're always talking about how people should consider starting their own podcast.
Yes, there's a whole chapter on it in the book, and that was something I was adamant with the publisher as well. I was like, I wanted it at the start, but it does fit better at the end. But I was like, I want a chapter explaining the kit I use, how I started up, just because I think the more the merrier. But yeah, sorry, go on.
You'll be pleased to hear, inspired by you, I have just recently started my own one.
Excellent.
My question is, now you've done it for however long you've done it, you've done 100 episodes.
Yeah.
If you could go back, if there's one mistake that you would avoid, that you could maybe pass on to me or anyone else that's starting up, what would that one thing be?
I didn't press record on one of them. On the Chris Jericho one, I got about 10 minutes in and realised I hadn't pressed record, but the moment I realised was about a minute into a 5-minute story that I didn't feel comfortable interrupting. So I had about 4 minutes of that story knowing it wasn't recorded. Just nodding and then thinking, how do I do a face that's shocked when I realised it's not going to go, oh. Because I'd already noticed and covered it up out of nerve. So it's a pretty obvious one. Just remember to record them, man. An important thing I think on all these type of things, and I say this to all the people who are on the network, most people on a podcast will come up with their system, their format or whatever else. That's fantastic as long as it's helping you along. Don't let your format restrict you. So, for example, Stop and Search on the distraction pieces and network, Jason was really excited about it being a 3 to 4 person live panel once a month, and I was like, that's great, but if you find a month where you're struggling to get a live panel or a collection of people together, just do a different version. Again, there's no rules to it, so rather than break your back to try and put together this panel, to try and get an audience in front of it and all that, take a month off from the live panel and have a one-on-one interview and things like that. I think it's what works really well with Tuesday Night Jaw, is once a month 4 of us sit round and talk about wrestling for like 3 hours, but then every week or so Jim will either just record one at home just answering questions, or he'll go and interview someone, and I think that's really important and key. And the third thing, I mean, you didn't ask for this many things, you said one thing. Clearly just be able to talk a lot, as you're getting from this, but I think one of the key bits of any podcast is consistency and regularity. The fact that I started this 2 years ago and there hasn't been a single Wednesday when there hasn't been a Distraction Pieces podcast means people don't need to check. They know it will be there every Wednesday. If they miss it, they can come back and look. But if you're doing it, I'll try and do one this week, it'll be next week, then people have to keep checking on you to see if you've done one, which they're not going to, they'll forget. They've got their own lives. So yeah, I think that's the key thing for me, because people will miss weeks, but they know there will always be one there at midnight on Tuesday.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice.
Cheers. Who else would like to ask a question? There you go, sir. Come on up. There's a whole row empty at the front. I don't know if any of the people in the back would like to come and sit down. There's 5 seats. 5 lucky winners can come and take a seat in the front row. 3. There's now 2. 2 seats. Hello, sir. What's your name?
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Tom.
And what would you like to discuss?
I wanted to discuss literacy issues.
Yes, excellent.
But before that, I was wondering, we hear quite a lot about you and Chris's night out anecdotes, but I wondered if there's any more about whiffing that you could give us.
About a whiffing's night out, sorry, I don't know, he's the old boring one, so he falls asleep a lot, which is always amusing. For anyone who doesn't know, I've spent years getting really good guests and really intellectual, important podcasts, and then at the end of last year I started doing like once every month or two, me and 2 of my idiot mates just getting drunk and talking shit, and they've become the most popular ones, like by a long way, and it's kind of heartbreaking, but it's also kind of nice because we just get drunk and tell stories. Yeah, I don't know, Stu Whiffin, I used to be in a band called Serious Problem, and they were an offensive rock rap band. They were awful, but they were managed by Ricky Gervais. Interesting. And yeah, they were. I used to go and watch them, and yeah, it was always entertaining. Dan Lassac, I went to see him more, and Stu Whiffin, his performance name was Roy Tarmac, and when Dan was at college with Stu, he was like the guy. He was the guy in the band. He was the front man and all this. And when me and Dan were on the front cover of NME, or there was a picture of me from the video, then our name on the front cover, Stu sent a message to Dan going, "Congratulations on NME, but remember, you'll always be Daniel Stevens and I'll always be Roy Tarmac." Just a beautiful little keep you in your place. So yeah.
Lovely, cheers. I've ordered some reading glasses recently, and I was going to get you to sign my reading glasses case, but I was a bit late ordering them, so they're not here till Friday.
Unbelievable. I'm not coming back on Friday to sign I'm sorry.
So I've ordered that. I'm going to start reading with your book. But, so my mum's setting up a charity for people with literacy issues, and they sort of like whittled it down to 3 groups they're targeted at. It's single parents, travellers, and people out of prison.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you had anything that you would recommend to read for people. Well, I just thought you probably know a lot about travellers and prisoners.
I mean, I've done some stuff in prison. Well, weirdly, I've brought some books up here to recommend, and genuinely, I think all of them would appeal to the people you mentioned. This is, I grabbed these all from the shelves here. This is Daft Wee Stories by Limmy, and it's fucking hilarious. It's brilliant. It's tons of just short stories by the comedian Limmy, and they slay me. I'll read one now because it's a short one. It's not even the best one, but it's called The Werewolf. Every full moon he changed. He was a werewolf. You wouldn't notice him if he walked past you in the street. He looked like any other guy, but the following morning he would change back into his normal form, a wolf. A wolf in a Travelodge room. No recollection of how he came to be wearing human clothes, nor of the newspaper lying under his paw, the crossword complete, or of the toast crumbs on his chest. The toast crumbs, oh my god, the toast crumbs, what did he do last night? They're just brilliant, man. There's longer ones than that, but that's a nice short one. But yeah, that's great, and a load of them are just silly. So again, for people, all joking aside, for people with literacy issues, I enjoyed that. I've never been the best reader or the biggest reader. As a kid, I didn't read much. As I was growing up, I'd have stuff recommended to me, and my brother will recommend a lot, and that will often, if I'm struggling with a book, as he's recommended it, I'll know it's worth persisting with.
It's mostly murder mysteries.
There's a lot, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. But another one that I read, the first year I played Glastonbury, it rained a lot, and I spent most of it sat in my space cruiser just reading a book. So rock and roll. Them, by John Ronson, was the book that I read on that day, and I smashed through tons of it, and it's absolutely fascinating. John's someone who has been on the podcast and is in the book. But he's someone that I've read, after this, I've read pretty much all his books, because again, I struggle at points with books, and he was someone that I found really easy to read. The way he writes, I found it really engaging and followed it. So when you find someone like that, you want to jump on all their work. So that's one. And then the third one is Mr. Nice by Howard Marks. So yeah, basically for the prisoners. It's amazing. I read this when I was a teenager, and again, Howard's in the book. He was one of the most amazing people to have on the podcast, and he passed away just under a year after I had him on the podcast, and it was amazing to get the opportunity to spend some time with someone who I'd read their stories as a teenager, and he was an amazing dude. And when I spoke to him on the podcast, he was at that point battling 4 different kinds of cancer, and you hear him on the podcast, he sounds quiet and weak, but he sounds happy and fine and content and perfectly pleased with his lot in life. So yeah, absolutely.
Funny enough, one of the only books I've read as an adult is Mr. Nice.
Yeah, it's
recommended to me by my dad, who's a police trainer.
There you go, perfect.
Yeah, drug smuggler.
Yeah, no, I recommend it. I mean, there's also actually a book coming out in a week or 2 which I'm really excited about, called Good Cop, Bad War by Neil Woods, who's he was an undercover policeman in the UK.
I think I know. Yeah.
And he was involved a lot in the war on drugs.
He's from Nottingham.
I'm not sure. He might be. Yeah, he might be. He works a lot with Leap UK. He was involved heavily in the war on drugs, and he's come out the end of it realising that it's a war that's doing more damage than good. And it feels like a really important book, because a policeman who's been undercover, sitting there. I mean, I heard an interview with him again on a podcast on my network called Stop and Search, but I was listening to it today, and I'm going to have him on the podcast soon, because it was amazing hearing him go, a lot of the problems with drugs at the moment are my fault. You know, the stuff that I did undercover, at the time I thought was the right thing to do, but we made criminals out of people who needed help, and we pushed aside, we walked past those sleeping in the street to try and catch someone smoking a little bit of weed. You know, we ignored so many problems in society to try and win this war that we're in, which is a fictional war and a stupid war. So that sounds like a really good read as well.
And any sections of your book you'd recommend as a sort of an initial?
I mean,
start off.
The introduction. I guess. It seems rude that I've skipped the foreword there, but I didn't write that bit, so. No, yeah. I mean, there's loads in there. The creative writing bit, I think, is just tons of really interesting and helpful stuff. In the social media section, the beauty of it is it's divided up, so you can look and go, what am I into? And pick that and start there, and then work your way through the rest, I guess.
I had one other little question, if that's
yes,
all right.
Go ahead.
Kind of separate to that, actually. My friend with tonight was thinking about starting up a podcast himself. I think he was going to call it, was it Backdoor Heroes of History?
Good name.
For a gay man, sounds an interesting name. Do you have any sort of so I think, who were you talking about? It was Guy Fawkes' accomplice, wasn't it?
Archibald Brown. He held the torch for Guy Fawkes. Yeah.
Nice.
And he was thinking about telling stories that people might not have heard of. Sort of.
It's a really good idea. And historical ones, I think, are fascinating. There's loads of really interesting people. There's this dude. I'm working on a novel at the moment, and in it, I write about this dude whose name I can't remember, but he's one of the unsung heroes of history in a similar way, or a vital person, because this is really fucking vague, because I can't remember all the details, but he was a dude who just worked in a library, and he found this poem, and it was a really old poem, but the reason he's so important is he found it and it was brought to the forefront, and this poem was it was kind of a poem but kind of philosophy. It was one of the first to kind of talk about the concept of space and stuff outside of our own world that we can't perceive, and it kind of triggered a lot of the Renaissance thinking and the Renaissance art and all this, and it was a massive catalyst for all of this, and it was because of some guy who just found it on a dusty shelf, forgotten for literally 100 or 200 years or something. And it's ironic that I too have forgotten his name. He is truly one of the forgotten heroes. But it will be in my book book if I ever get my novel done. So that's just some really early teasing there to try and advertise that. But yeah, that sounds good. And you should do that. And again, I've got a chapter in the back of my book of how to podcast, so
Brilliant.
You can get all the tips.
That's great. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Cheers, man. Who's next? This is great. Everyone who wants to come up is like, we're in 3 seats of each other. I love it.
I'm going to take this seat because no one has so far.
Go ahead, get comfortable. What's your name, or what would you like to discuss? Josh?
Well, I was going to discuss, whether any other books were coming up, but you kind of just jumped in on that question.
Don't get your hopes up. I've been writing this novel, legit, I did the maths the other day, for 17 years. And I've just, about a month ago, I finished the first draft. So I've sent it to a couple of people. Those who've read it will be stunned to find out it's taken 17 years. But yeah, I'm working on that. Stupid as it sounds, I think if this goes well, it lends itself to more volumes, because the nature of all the podcasts we've had, the guests we've had since, the guests that are going to come in the future, and even those who we couldn't fit in here or in these topics and chapters, there's some of my favourite guests and people aren't in the book because there wasn't room, they didn't fit.
So how different has that creative process been from you writing something afresh compared to the 2 books that I guess you've released that have been very much a collection and somewhat collaboration?
The 2 I've done that are collaborations are the 2 that have been released. And the one that no one is helping me with is the one I've been working on for 17 years. So I think that kind of sums up the inclusion of another person to make me complete my work. Yeah, that's kind of the massive difference there. But there's tons of stuff I'm working on. And again, I don't feel bad about the book taking this long, because originally it was a film idea at college, and then I suddenly had a career in music and toured the world. So I ain't beating myself too much about sitting around twiddling my thumbs, but it'll get there in the end.
That's good. So once you kind of preempted that question, soon, similarly, I guess, to a couple of other people in here, hopefully starting a podcast.
Brilliant.
It's going to be, we run a show in Bristol that's a true storytelling show.
Yeah.
So bring maybe 100 people into the room at the Wardrobe Theatre, and basically have a theme for the night. If people want to, they can come up. They have about 5-6 minutes to tell a part of a true story that happened to them. Yeah. And then we're hoping to podcast that. My main worry is that it's coming out monthly. We only have the opportunity, because we're all kind of doing it somewhat voluntarily, to run it once a month. We struggle to keep the momentum running through the month up to the next one. So whether you had any kind of suggestions towards that.
I mean, on the podcast front, if it's a number of different stories, it doesn't have to be monthly, right? You could split that into 4 and release it every week, and then you've got that momentum building into next month. So
potentially just a shorter.
Again, that's it. But another thing I was adamant about on the podcast, and Susie's a prime example of this, with Say Why to Drugs. Some of them are under 20 minutes long, and some of them are over half an hour long. And again, that's great. It's like you shouldn't, if you're forcing it to be a longer podcast, then it's probably not worth it being a longer podcast. I'm a big believer on that on albums and that as well. I love when I did Distraction Pieces, I think it's 8 or 9 songs long, because it's like, well, that's what I had. I'm not going to force some shit songs on there to make up an album. Adding something of a lower quality to everything else doesn't bring the quality up, it brings everything down slightly. So the fact is, if you can divide it into small packages, then that can work great. And it can be more appealing, because it's less to ask of people. It's saying, just spare us 20 minutes a week, rather than spare us an hour. It's only once a month, but spare us an hour is still scarier than spare us 20 minutes. Particularly with true stories from people that they don't know, because some weeks it's not going to be of interest to them. It's going to happen to not be stories that they're not into. But so, with his hand up there, come on up in the beautiful B. Dolan t-shirt, designed by Mr. Heggie, who did all the artwork in the Distraction Pieces book. Instead, he did a little portrait of each person. So yeah, there's his portrait of Stuart Lee, just as an example. Oh, I felt I needed to prove I hadn't just made that up on the spot to try and get some extra sales. Hello, sir. What is your name?
Kelsey.
And what would you like to discuss?
So you've obviously had lots of amazing people on the podcast.
Yeah.
It's kind of been mentioned already about how the podcast with Stu and Chris have gone down really well. Yeah, Craig. What is it about those podcasts that you think's made them go down so well with people?
It's a real simple thing, and it's something I found with the Ask Pip episodes as well. The fact is, unless I've got a guest on who's really pushing it hard themselves, if we're ignoring the extra pull of any guest, which is valid, but I think if we look at just my fan base, I'd say, let's go Adam Buxton. I'd say as much as 70% of my fan base are going to be into Adam Buxton. I think that's a fair kind of crossover. But 100% of my fan base are into me. So if it's just an Ask Pip, I found those to be really popular ones, because again, there's going to be certain people who, say for example, haven't heard of Adam Buxton and go, I don't know who that is, and will be not put off in a, Adam Buxton, I hate him, put off in a, I don't know that, I'll go on to something else. And I think it's similar in that, the fact that these are pushed more as the drunk cast, and it's billed as me and my mates getting drunk. It's not, particularly initially, people aren't going, oh, I've not heard of your mates, I won't listen. They're going, oh, this kind of sounds interesting. Then, as stupid as they are, I'm really pleased with them and really excited about them, and I think there's some kind of importance there, because the fact is, particularly on the last one, or an example from the last one, we got talking about mine and Chris's mate who took his own life on his 21st birthday, so a long time ago, and we talked about the depression that he had and the medication he was on, and we talked about just mental health, and 3 drunk dickheads from Essex talking about serious subjects makes it very relatable. There's a certain kind of person who is willing to come and sit like in a bookstore and hear people talk, and they're great, but they're going to be more open to these things anyway, whereas the people who aren't here because they're out partying or whatever might not take in some subjects like that or listen to lectures or podcasts on that kind of thing, whereas they might go, 3 drunk blokes, if I could have a laugh, let's have a listen to that, and that's important. And I chose one of the reasons I wanted to do it with those guys was, number 1, they're 2 of my closest friends, and number 2, they're 2 of the funniest people I know, but number 3, they're people I've talked to about serious stuff in the past. We do discuss heavy topics as well as make dick jokes all the time, so yeah, it felt like a valuable one in that way. And we just need to get more of Chris's dirty sex stories out, which he's really reluctant to share, but we've found that under him pretending there about his mate Craig, he seems up for telling them. He's got one that we really want him to tell. I won't go into full details on it, but it involves he met a girl, he took her home, realised he'd forgot his keys, and tried 7 different jumping kicks to kick the door down. The story goes on, but I love the mentality of an idiot who doesn't try and smash a door and goes, I've got this. And gets in his stance and does like a little kick. So yeah, we'll get more of that as well.
I completely agree. It's obviously you have all the amazing guests, but there's something about when it's just you and your mates.
Yeah.
It feels, I don't know, it just feels really relatable, and it feels like if you're talking to a famous comedian or an artist or somebody, it still feels a little bit like you're a little bit disconnected from it, but when it's just you guys completely relaxed, having a laugh, you can imagine yourself having those conversations with your mates, and they they're easily one of my favourites, or some of my favourites of the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for doing them.
There will be more. We're going to take a month or two off just because I feel we've done a few now. And I want to make sure, again, it's that thing of making sure the quality's high. We've still got stuff to say, and we don't start to get into a kind of performance notion of it. The more the guys become aware that they get tweets for saying funny things and get praise and stuff like that.
T-shirts, mate.
Yeah, we're working on T-shirts, but I don't want it to turn into we're all turning up with our 5 insults planned. Like, I want it to be a natural discussion and a natural thing. So yeah, we're gonna have a bit of a breather.
That's the best thing about it, keeping it natural. So
yeah. Perfect.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Cheers.
You.
Hello, come on up.
Sorry, I'm not as in convenient position.
It's all good. It's all packed in nice and tight. I appreciate everyone being here. Hello. What is your name?
Eden.
And what would you like to discuss?
I am a secondary school teacher, and day in, day out, I work with an awful lot of young people who don't have really good role models, particularly working in cities. From as early as Killer Mike, I found resonance of people who are very socially conscious. So obviously he mentioned about the barbershop in his interview.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if that's ever something that you started to think about, that your influence from, whether it be podcasting, whether it be what you've done in music, has a certain resonance with young people, and whether that can kind of have an effect on them.
It's a tough and interesting one. It's something I do get feedback on, which is always amazing and mind-blowing. It's also something I think it's important to not be too aware of when creating, if you know what I mean, because I never want to censor anything or be trying to pander to anything in particular, and that's important to me. But it's beautiful when I hear of certain stories or the podcasts or certain songs or lyrics are resonating with young people and helping young people. I get asked a lot to come and do stuff in schools, and I've always turned it down so far, except for one early on, because I think a lot of people don't realise that teaching is a very specific skill. Like it's a real skill, and I don't have the arrogance to think, oh, I've done music and that, I'll go in there and do that teaching lark easy. I'll just turn up and go,
I can do 30 year 11.
Yeah,
no
again,
problem.
it's a really tough skill, and it's one that I haven't learned. If I do get around to learning it in the future, I'd welcome that kind of thing. But there are people like Polar Bear and Kate Tempest who do some really good stuff going into schools, and Polar Bear was one of the ones who was an example to me on how much it is a skill, because I remember just talking to him once, and he's a spoken word artist and rapper. He's also an author now under Stephen Camden, which is his real name. His book's maybe here, in fact. He's got a book called Tape that's absolutely amazing, and one called, I think It's About Love. And he went in, like I met up with him after he'd been doing a workshop at one point, and he said he was in this school, and he was like, what did you do at the weekend? He was asking a few people, and they said, and then he said, right, now get a pen and write down and lie about what you did at the weekend. And something as simple as that, as telling them to lie, because lying's exciting. If you just said, sit down and make up a story, you're at school, it's kind of boring.
And standard practice.
Yeah, that simple thing of saying lie about what you did at the weekend engaged them and excited them, and he got these amazing stories, and then he taught them how that's storytelling or that's poetry or whatever else, and things like that. I was like, yeah, I can't do that because I never learned how to write poetry. I wrote just off my own back. I wasn't particularly good at school, so the one workshop I did, I was kind of useless. Like people are like, so how do you write? It's like, well, I sit down and then I write.
That's what I find a lot when I'm.
Which isn't a lot of help to people.
Yeah, one of the subjects I teach is art, and when I bring artists in, they kind of spend about 10 minutes going, so, and there's a lot of that before, because they don't expect to have a structure, because they obviously have their own structure within their working practice.
Completely.
But I find it interesting that you have that regard for teaching, considering you're somebody who didn't have much success from the education system, and sometimes I think we have put too much focus on meeting kids
in the school environment because it's not necessarily successful for everyone. So is there things from your own experience where, for example, you're obviously very structured in the way that you have a really good working ethos, because otherwise you wouldn't get stuff done. So is there anything that you think you would pass on to young people to make them understand how to just be successful regardless of whether they're like good at maths or good at algebra?
I mean, that's it. It's a tough one. There is a work ethic thing, and that's always been kind of rooted in me because I'm from Essex and my dad's from South London, and we're very like, it's that kind of families that it's like you got to work hard. I've always had jobs. I recorded a podcast that comes out in a few weeks with Marcus Brigstock, who's a great comedian, someone I look up to and see as a wonderfully intelligent person. I was at school similar to that, but you were only into one genre of music.
Yeah.
You couldn't be into punk and into hip hop and into dance, but now you can. Everything's opening up now. You can be, and it's because of the internet. It's because of all these other developments in technology and everything else. There's so much scope for anything and everything. So yeah, that's the terrible, unfocused advice I would give. That's why I'm not a teacher, basically.
No, I think what you said there about that being open to different things, isn't it? That's what it comes down to.
Sure.
I think things like this are a really good resource, which aren't what they were intended to be when you first set them out. But podcasts, again, that's something I can easily play in the classroom, and it has nuggets here and there, which can be used. So almost intending to make things for your own purpose can then be, put in another place, isn't it?
Completely that. I was in my hotel room earlier, and I was planning a post from Instagram tomorrow, because the book officially comes out tomorrow, and tonight has just made it that this whole tour has been sold out, which is insane. Thank you. And I was thinking exactly that. I was thinking of a post, and I was kind of saying to myself in my head, 10 years ago I decided to record a record, and I had no idea how that would go. It's gone all right so far. 2 years ago, I decided to start doing a podcast with no clue. At that point, podcasts weren't particularly big in the UK. It's such a recent thing, so I had no idea how that would be. And then, under a year ago, we decided to do a book, and we've just had the whole tour sold out, and it comes out tomorrow, and it's going to be on offer all over the place. And yeah. It's crazy. It's those things that, as I was starting any of them, you couldn't have predicted that next one.
But you want to do each of them, so that's
just want to do cool shit.
Yeah.
I've said this before, and it's become kind of
September.
It's kind of become a catchphrase. But I've never seen myself as I'm a musician or whatever else. It's always been I just want to keep doing cool shit, and that's the plan I go in forward. I've started doing acting now, and there's numerous other things, and people often ask, so what's the plan in the future? It's like, keep doing this, but by keep doing this I don't mean keep writing books or keep making music, just keep doing cool shit. That excites me. That's not cool as in I've got a beard kind of cool, just cool as in, man, wicked, I've got a book out. That's nuts.
Not just post to your Instagram account.
No, exactly that, yeah.
Okay,
well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers. I'm going to go a bit further back now, but not that far back. I'm going to go that far back. The man in the hat and the beard. I've started enjoying the power on this, that I can tell people they're not coming up and tell people they are. Hello sir, what is your name and what would you like to discuss?
Simon.
Simon, that's me. What would you like to discuss or ask? Pizza, great discussion.
I know you like it.
Today is the first day so far on this tour that I've not had any pizza. Day's not over yet, don't get too excited. But
you've come to Bristol and you haven't eaten pizza?
Not yet. I went to that pizza place and they didn't have milkshakes, so I went and had the burger. I told you this, but
it's not your best choice. That's why.
Yeah. What's the top choice?
First off, Pie Shop is new.
Pie Shop, P.I., isn't it?
Run by the Michelin star people.
Yeah, I've heard it's good. I had that recommended earlier. Did you recommend that to me, Susie? Yeah, it's good. It's terrible that Susie sent loads of recommendations, and the one that she would have got a notification that's had was the one about pizza, because I'll log that one for later in case you want to go and do that. But yeah, no, that's a good tip.
What would be your ultimate pizza?
I like... This is a serious subject and I'm very into it.
No messing.
This is simple. I like more the Italian style of minimal toppings. Every now and then I'll go kind of American way and go, put fucking meatballs on it and grab that cat and throw a football in there. But I generally I'll go, in most places I'll go double cheese because I'm a savage, and double ham. I just like ham and cheese. It's the simplest, but I adore it. But I mentioned La Favorita a lot, which is my favourite pizza place. It's in Edinburgh. They do a pizza that's, it's like got a bit of pesto on it. It's got chicken on it. It's got some ham on it. And it's got potatoes on it. And it's one of the best pizzas I've ever had. It's sliced, thin sliced potatoes with some herbs, and then it's a nice Italian style pizza. It's fucking amazing.
Well,
potatoes on a pizza, who knew?
Second question.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the sourdough revolution? Is it here to stay?
I mean, I'm excited about it.
Sure.
But I would put it low on the Wikipedia page of revolutions. I wouldn't have it right up the top there, but hey, I like the mixing things up. Yeah, I don't know. Good pizzas come in all shapes and sizes, and I think that is deeper than people are taking into account right now.
Sure. That's it.
Thank you very much. It's a good question. I enjoy it. Who's next? Right, I'm going to go for Jeff. Definitely going for Jeff. Also going for Jeff. How you doing, buddy?
I'm not too bad. How you doing?
I know your name, and what would you like to discuss?
Well, I'd like to ask, because generally people come coming with someone who's generally got quite a creative background and also has had issues with mental health. How did your collaboration come along with Dan the Sack in the first place? Did it kind of build up over time?
Yeah, I mean we worked together in HMV for a bit. I was hugely excited going back here because it's going into a stock room, but I haven't been in the stock room for ages. I worked in the stock room for a bit and all that. And yeah, we worked together in HMV, and it was weird because we weren't that close, but after we stopped working together, we were the two people who were kind of taking our music careers seriously, and he booked me for my first ever indoors gig at Scroobius Pip, and then he was playing that same night higher up the bill. It was his gig, he was putting it on, so I think that's a bit arrogant, but he was playing higher up, and in that he'd remixed a few of my songs, and we kind of all came together there, and yeah, it's been a wonderful journey.
That's cool. Also, with the way in which you approach writing, do you have a certain way in which you go around doing things? Do you have for instance, if you're for instance, whenever I'm humming something, I think of a hook first, or like a kind of chorus or something.
I'm bad at hooks, man. I'm good at just words and ideas and little phrases. I make notes on my phone all the time of different lyric ideas or just words I enjoy. I made a note on the walk up here of a lyric that's making an obscure reference to. It's comparing the tightness of my rhymes to the tightness of a very specific choke by a very specific Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's to the tightness of the Das choke, which is a choke that's it's complicated, and the fighter is Damian Maia, who's a great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. So yeah, I'll just come up with little ideas and then I'll try and structure out. It's one of the reasons that Dan and I worked well at points was a lot of the songs that we made, he'd come up with some kind of hook or make some kind of hook, and then I wouldn't have to worry about that. But on a few of them, on Let 'Em Come, I had the rhythm of that bass line in my head for ages, and I sat down with Walgie, who produced it, and literally was like, so it needs to go, and just made the noises, and he'd start doing it. I go, no, I said, And this was actually in a pub that we were doing this. It wasn't even in private. And he's like, got his headphones on. He's like, have a listen to this. Like, no, man. So yeah, it's kind of a weird one. It varies, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
How do you find, do you find yourself still getting nervous, like performing on stages and stuff?
I've kind of always really enjoyed it. My first ever tour, I was living in my 1987 Space Cruiser, and I was playing on street corners and outside other people's gigs. So the first time I was like, oh, there's a stage and a crowd that are expecting someone to do something. I was like, man, that sounds nice. That sounds a welcoming. See, I'm kind of weirdly relaxed about them all, when I shouldn't be. Like, for example, tonight, where there's a good 100 or so people, and I've not even got a show planned. I've got nothing planned. I was like, yeah, and that's been this whole tour. And some of them it's been 400, 200. I get to each venue and I'm like, so what's the plan? It's like, just go out and see what happens, just chat to people for a bit, but I don't know, it's fine. I guess I've been blessed with having, from early on in our career, having a fan base that turns out a lot and we seem to connect with.
Well, like I must have been to at least 50 million of your shows.
Yeah, you've been there a lot, man. You've been there a lot. Always appreciate it. And you've still got all the wristbands on, I think, dude. So
yeah, then
it worked.
Some of them had to come off because of it stopping my blood circulation.
Yeah. Well, perfect. Well, thank you very much, man. Thank you for coming over. Good to see you. Let's go with the tattooed arm I can see that's up in the air. I've been swayed, but that was you, yep. And then I'm going to come to this guy here at the front, because he's got a t-shirt on that I haven't got, but I was at that gig. Saw my name on your back earlier and I was like, oh shit. Hello sir, what's your name?
Mine's Will.
And what would you like to discuss, Will?
Art. All the guests that you have are artists in some way or another. And there's always this kind of endless debate about separating the art and the artist.
Mm-hmm.
And your job in the podcast is to get to know the artist behind the art.
Yeah.
So first off, what's your immediate impact when you're talking to like Warren Ellis and you think this is the guy who came up with Spider Jerusalem?
Yeah.
Which is an insane thing.
Yeah.
Like what was your immediate impact when you talk to these people?
Most of these, like every now and then, like I'm adamant on the podcast. My main goal, and something that I think makes the podcast work, is I try to let the guests talk as much as possible. That's kind of the point of it. I'm there every week, they're there a once, so I always figure just try and let them talk. And every now and then I'll have someone say, oh, you kept interrupting them, or kept just having your own story to relate to their story. They're normally the ones that I'm just really excited and nerding out. And when you're meeting someone new or you're excited, you will be like, oh, I've got a story about that. Oh, just because you're trying to impress them or trying to fit in and be cool. And that was it with all the comic book guys I've met. But Warren Ellis was a great one because he's local. He lives up the road from me. Like he lives like 30 minutes up the road. He's in Southend. I went to school in Southend. So it instantly, again, I guess it's trying to find things that find that human element. So that I'm not talking to this creator, I'm talking to this bloke who is probably as blown away as I am every day that his job is this weird thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it seems to have worked so far, and we get these very human conversations and interactions rather than. I don't think I've nerded out too much. I think Garth Ennis was the closest I've come because I've never met him and I'm a massive fan. But again, I still tried to go like, let's just talk to this person, right? And he doesn't do a lot of press, so I was a bit nervous. So I was like, I need to try not to nerd out too much, but just have a human conversation.
Right. Okay. So, do you have a point of view when it comes to separating the art and the artist?
I don't know.
Like I was thinking,
know.
Like Orson Scott Card. He's an author. He's not a very nice person.
Right.
And is that important?
Right, I get your point there. Yeah, in a way. It's a case by case example, right? Like I used to really enjoy playing Ignition by R. Kelly in my club nights because it's just a good tune, man. But dude's horrific piece of shit, and I can't even play it ironically anymore. I read some articles about the amount of different charges put against him that he's either got away with or he's just paid out of court, that all involve young girls, and it's like, right, there's some people who are into R. Kelly, and there's a lot of people who kind of enjoy him ironically and go, oh, he's a funny little character. I don't think he's that funny. I think he's kind of a piece of shit, so fuck that guy. But there's balance in it as well. When Straight Outta Compton came out, there was a lot of discussion of them leaving out Dr. Dre's history of domestic violence. And I wasn't that mad about it being left out of the film, because the film can only show a certain amount of things anyway, and the fact is he was involved in the film. It's going to have some kind of positive light, and so I thought that was kind of, it's not ideal but it's kind of understandable. My argument was like, well, they also gave like literally 3 minutes to his brother dying. It's just like, you can't tell every story. That would have been a huge thing in his life as well, but you can't tell every story. But that doesn't mean we have to forget it or ignore it. And I did a post about that at the time. I was like, look, I think the film's great, but I also feel that I can never have full respect for anyone who's hit a woman, like, and several times, and several different women. And yeah, it was amazing. I did that post, and one of the women he hit commented on it and kind of said, cheers, I appreciate that. And that was kind of mind-blowing, because you forget that social media is this open thing that's everywhere for everyone. And these are all real people. That's kind of the key as well. But then equally, these are all real people who we believe largely in people doing their time for their crime or reform, or the guy was saying the people that are coming out of prison being given another chance. There's things like that. I don't think that we should hate Dr. Dre forever because when he was younger he did some stupid things. There is a belief in change and a belief in growing up and changing, but still it doesn't mean we have to forget it. Which is a really mixed message there. I'm saying we shouldn't lynch him constantly, but equally he's got to have that hang over his head for the rest of his life, because that shit happened, and if someone wants to call him out on it, I ain't gonna get mad at him. So yeah.
Totally separate question.
Excellent.
Introduction at the start, the brilliant dead fish line.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that, and why did you put it at the start there?
Legit, I saw a dead fish on a pavement, and I thought that. Legit, like it's stupid shit, but everyone's like, oh, I love that line, it's so deep. It's like, yeah, I just saw a fish and thought. And then played with it, obviously, and played with the reality of it, and ignored the fact that obviously the fish didn't get there itself. But yeah, I played with that, and I liked it as an opening line because it was weird. Introduction was largely a collection of lines I hadn't used and hadn't found a place for in other songs. That line being a prime example. It doesn't really fit in any other songs, and Introduction was a collection of them that I then fleshed out and built, and I did loads of other stuff, but it's kind of a stream of consciousness song. It's not like, a lot of the stuff doesn't relate, a lot of the stuff is thoughts, and then a different thought, and then a different thing, so yeah, it was a mad one that was kind of, I didn't know if anyone would care about it or react to it, or if it was good. And then it came out and went down really well. And it was a really nice surprise.
Yeah, I love it as much as anyone else does. What about tattoos? What about people who get tattoos of your lyrics? As you're quite a popular person to get your lyrics tattooed.
Yeah.
How do you react to that? And especially
when you wicked, man. That's wicked. I've seen loads. I'm now nervous of you taking your shirt off, staring straight forward at my own shirtless body, which is also weird. No, it's cool. I've met 2 people who've got my portrait tattooed on them.
Oh.
It's always been fine, man. I don't know. It's nice. I think people who've got tattoos will often know that tattoos aren't as big a deal as a lot of people think they are. If you know what I mean. There's like a lot of people who have tattoos. I've got loads of tattoos. Whereas anyone who hasn't got a tattoo is like, can't believe they got your face permanently tattooed on them. Whereas to that person, it might have been a big deal, it might not. but the people I've seen have had a few different artists on a sleeve or whatever, and things like that. And you know, I've looked at that and gone, I'm better than him. I'm not as good as him. What? Why is Jedward on there? But yeah, it's always it's lovely. I like it. It's a compliment. But again, it's theirs, and I can't claim much from it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I think whenever you write anything to be released, you lose the right of any claim over it anymore. It's why I don't explain my lyrics very often, because I feel whatever it means to you is what it means. That's it now, I released it. I can't sit there and go, you're not understanding my lyrics right, you don't get the deep underlying references I'm making. It's like, no, it means what you need it to mean, because you paid for the right to have it mean that.
That's awesome. Well, that's poetry, so usually.
Thank you very much. Well, cheers, man.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. Awesome. Right. We're going to have one more, and then I'm going to go up the back there, and I'm going to sign all your books, and you can have photos. You can still buy the book if you haven't yet. You can buy any of the books I've recommended. Probably best I don't sign them. They're nothing to do with me. I will sign them though. And yeah, I'll be up there, and if you want a photo, we'll have someone to kind of take photos and that for you as well, and we'll all have a nice evening, then go home, and then I'll see if this pizza place is closed on. Yeah or not? Huh?
Pizza?
No, not pizza, that pie one. What time's it open till? Someone tell me when we're up there. Sir, would you like to come up and have the last question? This guy I noticed was wearing a t-shirt of it's the first ever, or the only festival that me and Dan Lassac headlined the main stage, which was absolutely mental for us. It was a great festival, like we hadn't been there before, but we'd headlined smaller stages before, and that meant the world. We headlined a stage at Reading and Leeds and a stage at Glastonbury, but to actually headline the whole day of a festival was just mind-blowing.
So, got to tell you, we had our 10th year this year.
Yeah.
During the teardown week, we had a big campfire, drink and chat.
Wicked.
Almost unanimously, you and Dan Lassac headlining was the best headline set of everybody around the campfire.
I mean, that's beautiful to hear, but the only reason that could be is because it meant as much to us as it meant to anyone out there, or more to us than it meant to anyone out there. And I think that's exciting and comes across. There's something really enjoyable about watching people really enjoying themselves. It's why I got mad at people getting mad at Pokemon Go. I've never played it, and everyone has sent me a picture of that fucking fish one on the pavement. I get them like 10 a day, like dead fish on the pavement. Yeah, I get it. It's pretty funny. But yeah, there's something beautiful about seeing people just really happy and enjoying themselves. And that gig, we had these big, huge balloons for the first time, and I was slapping them about like an excited child particularly during Dan's intro, any bits that Dan was doing, and just throwing them into the crowd and all sorts. It was a wicked day.
It was. Two good questions then.
No, let's talk about that more. So we started with no.
You're currently taking a well-publicised hiatus from the gigging, from the music, but it sounds like the creative wheels are still turning.
I'm very glad you put that, because it grates every now and then when I mention that and someone goes, enjoy your time off. Mate, since Wednesday, I've done 6 of these. I've recorded 3 other podcasts. I've gone to 3 Edinburgh Fringe shows because they were ones I had to check out. I've seen 3 films as well. That doesn't really count as work. And I stayed up till 6 a.m. to watch the UFC. And I've done over 15 hours of driving. So this time off is beautiful. I'm really enjoying my time off. But yeah, sorry, go on.
So what I'm wondering is, whilst you're not performing your old stuff, do you keep in touch with it at all? Do you go back and revisit it? Because at some point you might hopefully go back and perform it again. Do you think your relationship with it might have changed over time?
Yeah, I think it will have, and unconsciously. I've never listened to my own music anyway, but so the only time I hear it is live. And it's really weird at points, because me and Dan in particular on a few songs have changed the way certain songs are live. And it'll be mad then if I overhear it somewhere, like, oh, that's how that song goes. That's not how I know it to go. But yeah, that's part of the excitement and part of the reason for my hiatus from playing live and being strict on the hiatus as well. Is the fact is, our last tour and our last album was the biggest album that we've ever released, and one of the ones I'm most proud of. Songs like You Will See Me and Stunner and things like that. I think me and Dan, you can see our development, and I'm really proud of it. And the tour was the biggest tour we've ever done. It was amazing. We had 2 nights at Coco in London, and on one of them, Billy Bragg popped out to do a song with us. Mental. It was absolutely nuts. So I've loved every minute, and I've felt I've put 100% into every performance. As I said, it's beautiful to hear when people are saying that it's highlights, but it's because I've really, every gig we've done, even when there's 12 people in Italy, which was on that last tour. So on the same tour we did 2 nights at Coco sold out, we played to 12 people in Italy and still came off stage dripping with sweat and trying to put 100% into it. But I was concerned that might at some point start going through the motions. I did a gig at the Hammersmith Apollo, and I was opening the gig, and on the lineup was Steve Coogan as Alan Partridge, The Cure, Professor Brian Cox, Stuart Lee, Alan Moore, all these amazing people. And I was opening it up, this beautiful historical venue with some spoken word. And I realised that I was trying to just get through my bit because I wanted to watch everyone else. And it only hit me on the way home. I was like, shit, I've just done fucking spoken word poetry in front of 4,000 people, all listening and paying attention. And I was just kind of, well, we'll get this out of the way. That should have meant the world. And not that I didn't enjoy it. I don't think it's an arrogance thing. I'm a massive fan of Stuart Lee and The Cure and all these albums, so it's more excitement. But that made me go, right, I need to stop for a bit now to make sure that it never turns into that. We'll churn through this and then see how much takings we've got on merch or whatever else. So yeah, I'm excited to come back and be as excited as I've been at every other gig.
Excellent. And talking about gigs and touring, I love it every now and then when you respond to people who say, oh, come and play in Woking, and your response is, I'm playing somewhere close, get off your ass and come and see me.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what the furthest is you've travelled for a gig and whether it was worth it.
I mean, let's switch it up. The shortest I've travelled for a gig is 45 minutes. That's the shortest. I live in a small town in Essex and there's no gigs there. So I always have to go into London or Southend, so maybe Southend about half hour, 40 minutes, but still door to door, probably 45 to an hour. So yeah, it infuriates me when you post your gig listings and people are like, or this was one that I told a lot of people, I don't know if there's anyone here from Wales, but I had a lot of people saying, no love for Cardiff, no love for Wales, like plenty of love for Cardiff and Wales. 45-minute train journey away from Cardiff and Wales. So. Love's a two-way street, ladies and gentlemen. Not going to come to your doorstep. But yeah, I've driven to Bristol for a gig before. I came to see St Francis and B Dolan, and I know them, but it was their first gig in the UK on this particular tour. I liked the venue. I was like, I'm gonna come up for that. I regularly drive to Brighton, which is about hour 20, because I liked watching bands in Brighton rather than London, because it's always a different kind of aesthetic and feel. So yeah, I've travelled around a lot for gigs, I guess. I don't think I've gone anywhere far. I once saw Slipknot in LA, supported by Head PE. But that's not why I went to LA. So it'd be unfair to say, I travel thousands of miles here, you can get on a train from Cardiff. But yeah, I am a big believer in that. And St Francis and B Dolan are an example at the moment. They're over, they're up at the Edinburgh Fringe. In fact, they're playing Start the Bus on the 31st? Yeah, of course Jeff knows. I don't know why I questioned it in my own head. And the thing I say to everyone there is, like, they're doing a load of shows at the Fringe, which is there all month. It's one of the most amazing places to go, so anyone in the country can go there. It's fucking awesome. Then they're doing Leeds, Manchester, Bristol, London and Brighton, I think. Instantly they post that. There's tons of people going, why aren't you playing with Liverpool or wherever else? And on ones like that, it's like they're literally travelling thousands of miles to come and play. Like this one is literally thousands. So it's like, so you can maybe make up the difference a bit. You can travel 100 miles. That sounds like a lot, but it's really not. It's not even halfway in the meetings. So yeah, I'm a big believer of that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thanks for this evening.
Well, thank you very much, sir. As said, I'm going to head to the back now, and we'll all have a bit of a chat and a sign and things like that. Thank you very much, buddy.
That was cool.